Welkom by hierdie video-onderhoud met Professor Rothney Tshaka van die Universiteit van Suid-Afrika. Rothney is dosent in systematiese teologie. Rothney, thank you so much for joining Marinda and myself today.
It's a pleasure, Rudy and Marinda.
Thanks. Rothney, maybe we must just start a bit in the past. Won't you tell us about your formative years, growing up, where you grew up, and perhaps then your move into theology and theological training?
All right. Thank you, Rudy, Marinda. I grew up in a little village outside of Kimberley called Richie. Went to school there, and then I think because I've spent all of my time in that place, Richie, I just wanted to get as far away from Richie as possible. So when the time came for me to go to varsity, I went to the University of the Western Cape. That's where I did my BTH. And then we moved as part of the training of the URC to Stellenbosch, where I did my MDiv. I did a licentiate, and then I did another master's degree in Amsterdam. I came back and then I did my PhD at Stellenbosch. I started working a little bit at the Mare Theological Seminary, the Mare Theological College in Masvingo in Zimbabwe, after which I went to teach at the New Brunswick Theological Seminary in New Jersey. And I came back in 2009, where I'm currently still employed at the University of South Africa. I'm a part-time minister in our church, and I'm pastoring a local congregation in Middelburg called Nazareth. So I always try to keep my feet in ministry, although the bulk of my work is in the academic space. Yeah.
Rothney, maybe we must just ask you, of all the sort of theologians or theological voices who may still be alive or may have passed or gone before us, who had the biggest influence on your thinking and your work and your current work as well?
Yeah. Well, I think really quite a few did, but of course the ones that I need to signal out would of course be Karl Barth, on which I did my PhD at the University of Stellenbosch. But then of course people like James Cone as well, the father of Black liberation theology, influenced me locally. We have quite a number of students of Black theology. Alan Busak, of course, would be one of the people that also influenced me a great deal. Takatso Mufokeng, we have Simon Maimela, a number of these stalwarts of Black theology would all have all contributed really in being the person that I am theologically today. So I would not discount any one of them, because I do think that there are reasons why one had to dabble in them in the past, and I'm really grateful for the fact that I was introduced to such great men of stature.
So Rothney, if I listen to you, I can't wait to listen to the stories of how that influenced you, and how did it help you to become the person that you are today. So maybe you can give us a little more on that, if you don't mind. Something that influenced you in such a way that you say the person you've become today. So maybe you can give a little more of that.
So maybe I need to tell a little story about. Now you've asked me about the theologians that influenced me, but the teachers, in terms the theological teachers that influenced me. So when I was at Stellenbosch, I did of course my PhD with Dirk Smith, who also influenced me a great deal. But I used to have quite important conversations with Hendrik Bosman, and I remember very well how he would always allow me to really allow where I come from, the context where I Richie, where I came from, to be quite an important part of my development. So every time when we have conversations, he would from time to time just check, how do I place Richie in this trajectory that I'm busy with? And I think that thing, looking backward now, I think that has helped me tremendously in having a kind of theology, or getting interested in a theology that refuses to lose sight of context, such that I am what I am based on where I come from. But you also need to have a theology that is able to appeal to these people primarily. So Bosman was able to help me get a sense that you might be this great theologian, but you're really nothing if it does not cut through, if it does not reach those people in Richie where you came from. So have a theology that matters for those people. And the things that matters for those people were, of course, issues of where they were located in terms of the economy, where they were located in terms of racial relationships. So these were the things that I think allowed me to also wrestle a lot with Karl Barth and other European theologians, if I did not feel that they do address these issues, and it becomes so important to me and in my theological development.
Sure. Rothney, talking about context and the importance of context, why do you think is almost the intersection between race and church, or race and religion, or race and Christianity, why is that such a crucial point of connection?
Rudy, you're asking a very difficult question, and I think that question would be answered differently based on who you ask the question to. So for the simple things like people at Richie, the race question becomes an important issue because of how they have come to relate to it. Like you would have the so-called black church that gets a cow from the white church as a donation every month, that kind of a thing. So the relations are dependent on that kind of a thing. There's not much conversation that speaks to why we are the way we are. So that anyone who asks a question that challenges that is already seen as problematic. So what I'm saying is that for the people of Richie, the question of race and theology is only interpreted through the relations that they have with white folk. And it is relationships that are only at particular levels. So you don't have relationships of people having coffee, space for that. There's no space for that. The relation is that of the worker during the week and the boss. And Sunday you will have the white minister coming to preach to us. And even if it is not a white minister, you'll have the white elder who doesn't even preach in their congregation, ascending the pulpit of the local church, while with that only the predicant is the one who's supposed to ascend the pulpit. So these are the contradictions that we've always been confronted with. That why does it seem that being white is such a magical thing that it would take an ordinary member of a white congregation to ascend the pulpit, for instance, where we would insist that no elder of the congregation can ascend that pulpit. But of course, these are the contradictions that we had to live with and continue to live with. And they are most difficult for these people to really just, engage and interrogate, because interrogation and engagement means you're problematic. And people will just, for the sake of peace, maintain that relationship and not question it.
So, Rothney, I'm listening to you and I'm trying to put my picture, how was it to be part of that congregation? What happened to your people when this context played out in front of you? So now I'm tempted to ask you, so what angers you? What upsets you in this context where we are living today? Maybe if that's an unfair question, I'll take it. But sometimes we need to also understand. Yeah.
Yes. So Miranda, my friend Rudy, that, and I've said this previously, that I'm a real sucker for conversations. I think I'm a sucker for conversations because I realize that some people have no choice but be part of these conversations, and other people have the luxury of saying, I don't want to be part of this conversation. You see, so these are conversations that must be had, but you need to have people that understand that they are sometimes uncomfortable, but they are relevant, they are necessary, and that we to collectively need to find a space so that we are almost forced in this room to have this conversation, but that we want to have this conversation, because you can have a conversation with someone who doesn't want to have this conversation. And we have seen that lack of conversation has made people much more bitter in this country, because we were just told to do things, we're going to do them like this, and we now realize that maybe we should have had more conversations. Maybe we should have find ways to force other people to have these conversations, and maybe we would have had a better. So I've always hoped that the rigid context would allow for us, Black and white people, workers and the farmers, to have conversations and to acknowledge that certain things happen to some communities, not because of the fact that they are divinely ordained, but because of precise histories that we have, and because of questions of whiteness, for instance, and the privilege that comes with that. So this is, you can imagine, there's no way I can have this conversation with members of my community in Richie, because that would be seen as very problematic for the relations that they have with bosses around. So it's like, you know, there's this saying, my grandmother would sometimes get very furious when we had gotten involved in things that she deemed political. And she would say, you know, I wish something bad could have happened to you. She doesn't really mean that, but she wants to say things to deter you from continuing with that, because she knows the consequences of what happened with these kinds of people. So most of our people grew up with that determined. People would discourage you because, God forbid, what could happen to you. So this is, I can't have this conversation at a level that I can have at the university with my community, because for them it's all about survival. It's all about the fact that I hear what you're saying, brother, but I have to go out here on Monday and earn a living, and I have to adopt an attitude and a facade so that at least I'm not seen to be cheap, and so that I can know that I will have my job for the rest of the time that I'm going to be here. So these are the dynamics that we find ourselves in. And these are the dynamics also that we have to acknowledge in kinds of conversations that are meant to deal with the questions of reconciliation, that the dynamics are never the same. And we have to find ways to work on them such that we can have conversations and have them in ways that we feel we are fair and we're all empowered to contribute towards that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Rothney, something in what you're saying makes me think of, you know, the options. If we zoom out a bit, yeah, to the collective, you know, called South Africa. I mean, every time there's a race issue, or whether it's in sport, or whether it is about Black Lives Matter, or whatever it may be about, whenever there's an issue like that, or an incident rather, you know, we sort of sigh a collective sigh of definitely not relief, of uncertainty and anxiety and whatever. And time again, it's as if we are reminded that we haven't dealt with these things. So if we think about options, and we think some have the luxury to talk, some have the luxury to not talk, some have the fear of talking, they've got too much at stake, all those different relationships you talked about are in jeopardy almost. But I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, well, what are the other options we have than to have these conversations? And you've said it numerous times that, you know, our biggest fear should perhaps be to stop talking. So and then again, my question back to, I mean, this interview is in a sort of church space, technically. What should the churches then do? What should the churches to facilitate, or to allow, or to bring forth?
You know, you just reminded me of a similar response I once got from a colleague, a South African colleague, when we were at a conference in Brazil, and he said to me after I gave a paper, but where's the hope in this, Rothney? Where's the hope in this? And I do understand it sounds like there's no hope at all. But I think the mere fact that we're able to put these things in this way, not covered, not hidden, for me, we are already on our way. because we have never had the conversation as sincere as we need to. That's what we owe the church. That's what we owe our communities. We have to have sincere conversations. Now, I'm not very much worried when people have that sigh, because we've always been taught to want to understand, why do people sigh when certain things are raised, and we do that sigh because we know for a fact we have not taken stock of the past. So you are bound to sigh if you know that we have not dealt with this thing. You're wishing it away. That's basically what we want to do. Now, I do believe, Rudy, there are some time that we sometimes need to park the racial conversation sometimes, because I've learned sometimes that it is sometimes thrown in like a cat among the pigeons. Now, for a person who believes in conversation, I think it's something that we must carefully monitor. Because sometimes there's a time to pack it so that we're able to keep people accountable. Sometimes we have leaders that need to be kept accountable. And sometimes you can see how they just all refer to the racial past because they don't want to be held accountable. The second point is, I wish our white brothers and black brothers and sisters would understand that we are all together in this boat called South Africa. And I wish they would understand that leaving the country and not participating in conversations, in fact, is not helping. You know, you don't want a situation where someone wants to become a terrorist rather, because you feel that I cannot participate in this conversation. Because some people do feel like that. Rothney, I really want to participate, but I don't think the environment is conducive enough for me to say what I say also. Because then you have a question of people now competing for the title, who is the biggest victim? And this is basically what we have in this country, that you have black and white people now claiming that they are the biggest victim. And that prevents us from pinpointing the issues that need immediate attention. So I'm saying there is talk for that, there is place for that, but we need to find ways of nicely saying, we are not wishing it away, but we're saying for the purpose of speaking about local elections, for instance, accountability, let us pack it a little bit and let us take stock of what has been done, so that we don't have people who are just emotional about this issue. So for the church, and this is what I believe, I think that in the midst of all the challenges that the church is faced with, it is still one of the trusted institutions, and we are not harnessing that that enough. So I think there is still place for us where we have to have a conversation that is guided in this particular way, intended for black and white people to say, I am comfortable sitting in this room, hearing about the past when it is time for that, and taking stock of what we have to take stock of to proceed. That is basically what I yearn for.
I'm trying to picture for myself, so what can we do to help this process? So if I listen to you, Rothney, so you are still open, and I'm using those words because I've listened to someone who was part of the Feast Must Fall conversation quite a while back, and this young lady said she's so fed up helping white people to understand the problems of South Africa. And I remember that because it makes me sensitive to even trying to have these conversations, because I think I need it. And I listen to a lot of my white friends. We definitely need to hear our black brothers and sisters' voices, experiences, and to, as in your words, to take stock. So if I may ask, how would you picture that process? We've sort of come a long way and we've messed up some of these processes, but we can't give up. And that is for me so special that you're willing to talk to us today. If we can't give up, how do we proceed? What would you do if you could design this process going forward? Would that be, how would that look like?
Miranda, I missed you a little bit there, but I think I've picked up the gist of that. What can we do? So there's one important guy, and I don't like to talk too much. One important guy said, "You can't see your own back." I mean, we can't see our own back, and that's why I'm saying conversation is so important for me, because it does not mean that in my own assertions as a black person, that they are the standard, that they are the norms. We need to have conversation. Sometimes the fact that white people have removed themselves because they feel guilty or they feel bad about that is not helping the process. Now, I say there are certain things that I can do in my Black community. There are things that white people can do in their white communities. And I would sometimes rather forge alliances with people that I believe can help me communicate what I think are the issues in their white context, and that I can help what they are thinking is needed in the Black community, because we still have not gotten to a point where I can sit across you and really say the things that I say. I'm sure, Marina, there's a lot of things that you want to edit, because we have not gotten to a point where we can say it and be corrected. That's our problem. We have so many anxieties, like, I don't know if I said it, maybe it's not politically correct. How would you know that unless you have said it? Say that the conversation happened, and then it can be corrected going forward. I also don't think that we have a luxury to give up on white people who don't understand these things. Sometimes some of them are really sincere. I mean, if you have had apartheid that only fed you a diet that it thought you needed to be fed, you can't be surprised that people are sometimes still astonished at the things that we say. So you have to leave room for that. You also have some people who are deliberately ignorant, who just does not want to go there and would find all kinds of ways to escape that. That also, we need to have room for that. But I don't think we, Black and white people, have the luxury of saying, you know what, we just have to stop it. So the response would be, get like-minded people, get Black, white, whatever, like-minded people that can really help us have these conversations. Secondly, it also means that we have to stop participating in jokes and all the kinds of things that perpetuate the past. So what kinds of jokes do you laugh at? And why do you laugh at these kinds of jokes of the other? So these are the things that you have to ask yourself, how can I say I am for this thing when I still find it very, very amusing when certain kinds of jokes are made, around the braai and having a glass of wine. It starts with you, basically. But it also know that a number of times you would want to just give up on this thing. It's part of that. So you can't want to invest because you want to see an outcome already. We don't know how tomorrow is going to look like. We only know what we can do today. What will happen tomorrow, we will have to deal with tomorrow then. But every one of us has a responsibility to make sure that we have these things and we work towards not only speaking about it, but also embodying these things that we speak about.
Rothney, what I hear in this remark, and I'm very sad to say that we need to put a sort of a semicolon at this conversation. Perhaps we can do a follow-up in time to come. But what I hear in that last remark of yours is a kind of a deep and honest mutual discussion, where we are not afraid to make mistakes, where we are not afraid to speak our minds, where we are literally free to say what we are really thinking and feeling. I love that expression of, about not being able to see one's back, because I mean, that is just so apt and so useful. So for now, Marinda and I would like to thank you on behalf of the task team for Identity and Reconciliation of the Dutch Reformed Church. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for helping us to interrogate what we cannot see or understand. And it's the most positive kind of interrogation to do it with a brother like yourself. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure indeed. I always enjoy having talks with Rudy and Marinda. Let's hope we can have these things again in the future.
Wonderful.